The film shows Rodriguez's old neighborhood in downtown Detroit and the smoky bar where, back in the late 60s, he was discovered by Dennis Coffey, the legendary Motown producer.
We thought he was like the inner city poet, putting his poems to music of what he saw, and it was definitely a very gritty look at what he saw in the streets of Detroit. The only writer that I had heard of that time period was maybe Bob Dylan, that was writing that well.
Lost my heart when I found it.
Coffey co-produced his first album, Cold Fact. Critics liked it, but it bombed. Steve Rowland was responsible for his second. It did no better.
Nobody in America had even heard of him. Nobody even was interested in listening to him. How can that be? How can that be?
And how could it be that no one in America knew that Rodriguez had become an icon in South Africa? Steve Segman owns a record store in Cape Town.
To many of us South Africans, he was the soundtrack to our lives. If you walked into a random white liberal middle-class household that had a turntable and a pile of pop records, you would always see Cold Fact by Rodriguez. To us, it was one of the most famous records of all time.
It was the 1970s, and under apartheid, political repression was at its height. Rodriguez's lyrics resonated with people who'd had it with the system.
The mayor hides the crime rates, councilwoman hesitates, public gets irate, but forgets to vote date. The system's gonna fall soon to an angry young tune, and that's a concrete fact.
We didn't know what the word anti-establishment was until it cropped up on a Rodriguez song, and then we found out it's okay to protest against your society, to be angry with your society.
South Africans were buying 500,000 of his records and were astonished to learn that no one else in the world had ever heard of him. He was the ultimate enigma.
And then we found out that he had committed suicide. He set himself alight on stage and burned to death in front of the audience. It was probably the most grotesque suicide in rock history.